What if I told you that one of the most spectacular race wins in Formula One history was completely fake? That a driver deliberately crashed his car at 200 miles per hour just to help his teammate win? This is Crashgate, F1's biggest scandal ever. And here's why it shook the entire sport to its core. We're talking about a conspiracy that involved team principals, engineers, and drivers. A scandal so big, it changed how Formula One operates forever. So buckle up, because this story has more twists than the Monaco Grand Prix circuit. But before we dive into the crash itself, we need to understand the context. 2008 was a massive year for Formula One. Lewis Hamilton and Felipe Massa were locked in an epic championship battle that would go down to the final corner of the final race. Meanwhile, Renault was struggling. After dominating in 2005 and 2006 with Fernando Alonso, they were now fighting just to score points. The pressure was immense. Teams spend hundreds of millions of dollars, and results matter. This pressure, this desperation to win at any cost, would set the stage for what happened next. The incident, Singapore Grand Prix 2008. Let's start with what actually happened. September 28, 2008. The Singapore Grand Prix, F1's first ever night race. The atmosphere was electric, the track was challenging, and the racing was intense. Nelson Piquet Jr. is driving for Renault. He qualifies 16th, not great, but not terrible. His teammate Fernando Alonso starts 15th. Both cars are struggling for pace, and a points finish looks unlikely. The race begins, and here's where it gets interesting. On lap 12, Alonso makes an unusually early pit stop. Most drivers were planning to go much longer on their first stint, but Renault brings Alonso in for fuel and tires. 2 laps later, lap 14, Nelson Piquet Jr. is coming through turn 17 when suddenly, crash. He loses control and slams into the barriers. The car is destroyed, debris is everywhere, and out comes the safety car. Now, under safety car rules, everyone bunches up, and crucially, all the drivers who hadn't pitted yet now have to come in. But Alonso, he's already got fresh fuel and tires. He goes from running near the back to suddenly leading the race. When racing resumes, Alonso has track position, fresh rubber, and a full tank. He goes on to win the race, his first victory in over a year. It was being called one of the greatest strategic masterstrokes in F1 history. Except it wasn't strategy at all. And if you're already hooked by this insane story, smash that like button, hit subscribe for more F1 explainers, and drop a comment letting me know. Did you know about Crashgate before this video? Team orders behind the crash. A full year later, in September 2009, Nelson Piquet Jr. drops a bombshell. In a meeting with FIA officials, he reveals the truth that would rock Formula One to its core. The crash wasn't an accident. It was planned, orchestrated, and executed as part of a deliberate strategy to help Fernando Alonso win the race. Here's how it worked. Team principal Flavio Briatore, one of the most powerful men in F1, and engineering director Pat Symonds came up with the plan. They approached Piquet Jr. before the race and gave him specific instructions. They told him exactly where to crash, turn 17, because they knew that location would guarantee a safety car deployment. They even told him exactly when to do it, shortly after Alonso's early pit stop. This wasn't a spur-of-the-moment decision. This was premeditated race manipulation, involving some of the biggest names in the sport. Briatore wasn't just any team boss. He had managed world champions. He was connected to everyone in the paddock, and he wielded enormous influence. Pat Symonds was equally respected, a brilliant engineer who had been instrumental in Renault's previous championship wins. These weren't rogue operators. These were establishment figures at the heart of Formula One, the psychology behind it. But why would they do something so extreme? To understand that, we need to look at the pressure these people were under. Renault had gone from championship winners to also-rans. Sponsors were unhappy, the board was asking questions, and jobs were on the line. In the high-stakes world of F1, a single win can be worth millions in prize money and sponsorship value. For Piquet Jr., the situation was even more precarious. He was struggling to establish himself in F1, his results weren't impressive, and there were rumors his seat was under threat. When your team principal, the man who controls your career, asks you to do something, saying no isn't really an option. Motivation, securing a win. Let's break down exactly why this plan was so appealing to Renault. Alonso had qualified 15th. In F1 terms, that's basically nowhere. The chances of scoring points, let alone winning, were minimal. Historically, drivers starting 15th finish in the points maybe 30% of the time, and wins are virtually impossible without some kind of external intervention, like a safety car. Under the 2008 regulations, cars could refuel during pit stops. But here's the crucial part. You couldn't refuel under the safety car. This rule was designed to prevent teams from gaining unfair advantages during caution periods. So, when Piquet crashed and the safety car came out, everyone who hadn't pitted yet was stuck. They had to come in for their mandatory pit stops, but they could only change tires, no fuel. Meanwhile, Alonso, who had already pitted and taken on fuel, suddenly found himself with a massive strategic advantage. It was like a game of musical chairs, where Alonso was the only one who already had a seat when the music stopped. From 15th to 1st in the space of a few laps, all thanks to a perfectly timed accident. Piquet's confession and fallout. The truth might never have come out if not for what happened next. In 2009, Renault made a decision that would ultimately expose their own crime. They dropped Nelson Piquet Jr. from the team. Piquet's results hadn't been great, and the team decided to go in a different direction, but they had just made a very dangerous enemy, someone who knew their darkest secret. Imagine risking your life, not for victory, but for a lie, then getting dropped like nothing happened. Feeling betrayed, and with nothing left to lose, Piquet Jr. decided to go nuclear. In July 2009, he approached the FIA with a story that seemed almost too incredible to believe. The FIA initially treated the allegations with skepticism. After all, this was a disgruntled former employee making accusations against some of the most respected figures in the sport. But as they dug deeper, the evidence began to mount. They analyzed telemetry data from the crash, interviewed team members, and examined communications between key figures. Slowly but surely, a picture emerged of a conspiracy that went right to the top of the Renault organization. The breakthrough came when investigators found that Piquet's crash showed none of the typical signs of a genuine accident. His steering inputs, braking patterns, and the way the car hit the barriers all suggested deliberate action rather than driver error. The investigation unfolds. The FIA investigation, led by the World Motorsport Council, was thorough and damning. They interviewed dozens of witnesses, analyzed thousands of documents, and pieced together a conspiracy that shocked the F1 world. What they found was a pattern of behavior that suggested this wasn't a one-off incident. There were questions about other races, other suspicious incidents, and a culture within Renault that prioritized results over integrity. Massive penalties. When the World Motorsport Council announced their findings in September 2009, the penalties were unprecedented in their severity. Renault received a 2-year suspended ban from Formula One. This meant that if they were found guilty of any similar offense within 2 years, they would be immediately expelled from the championship. For a manufacturer that had invested hundreds of millions in F1, this was a devastating blow. Flavio Briatore received an indefinite ban from all FIA-sanctioned motorsport events. This wasn't just F1. It covered everything from karting to the World Rally Championship. For someone whose entire career was built around motorsport, it was essentially a life sentence. Pat Simons received a 5-year ban from F1. As one of the sport's most respected engineers, this effectively ended his career at the highest level of motorsport. Nelson Piquet Jr., meanwhile, received full immunity in exchange for his cooperation with the investigation. Without his testimony, the truth might never have come to light. But the story didn't end there. Both Briatore and Simons challenged their bans in French courts, arguing that the FIA had exceeded their authority. In 2010, a French court ruled in their favor, overturning the bans on procedural grounds, long-term impact on F1. Crashgate didn't just end careers, it fundamentally changed how Formula One operates. The scandal exposed serious weaknesses in the sport's governance and integrity systems. The FIA implemented a complete overhaul of their regulatory framework. They established new ethics committees, introduced stricter penalties for sporting fraud, and created better whistleblower protection systems. Teams now face much more rigorous monitoring of their communications and decision-making processes. The days of backroom deals and gentlemen's agreements were over. Everything had to be transparent and accountable. For Renault specifically, the damage was enormous. Their reputation in motorsport took a hit that lasted for years. Sponsors became wary, fans lost trust, and the team struggled to attract top talent. But the impact went beyond just one team. Crashgate changed how fans, media, and sponsors viewed Formula One. Questions were raised about the integrity of other races, other results, and whether what we were watching was genuine competition or manufactured drama. The sport introduced new regulations around team communications, race manipulation, and sporting fraud. The penalties for similar offenses were increased dramatically, and the investigation procedures were strengthened. Crashgate also raised deeper questions about the nature of competition in Formula One. In a sport where teams spend hundreds of millions seeking marginal advantages, where does legitimate strategy end and cheating begin? Every team tries to gain advantages through clever interpretations of the rules, innovative engineering, and strategic thinking. But Crashgate crossed a line that most people didn't even know existed: the deliberate staging of accidents to manipulate race results. The scandal set a precedent that still influences F1 today. Any suspicious incident, any unusual strategic decision, any unexpected result is now viewed through the lens of Crashgate. The sport lost a certain innocence that it has never fully recovered. So, there you have it. The complete story of why Crashgate remains F1's biggest scandal. A fake crash, a corrupt conspiracy, massive penalties, and consequences that changed the sport forever. It's a story that has everything: betrayal, revenge, corporate corruption, and sporting fraud. It proves that in Formula One, sometimes the most unbelievable stories are the ones that actually happened. But perhaps most importantly, Crashgate serves as a reminder of what can happen when the pressure to win overrides basic integrity. In a sport where split-second decisions can mean the difference between glory and failure, the temptation to cross ethical lines will always exist. Today's Formula One is more transparent, more regulated, and more accountable than ever before. But the shadow of Crashgate still looms large, a permanent reminder that in the high-stakes world of motorsport, not everything is always as it seems. If this deep dive into F1's darkest scandal blew your mind, make sure to like this video, subscribe for more F1 explainers and breakdowns, and comment below. What other F1 controversies should we investigate next? The 2021 Abu Dhabi finale, Spygate, McLaren's lying scandal. Let me know what you want to see. Thanks for watching, and remember, in Formula One, the truth is often stranger than fiction.